Hello, everybody, and my workshop today is on mental health. So, who is affected by mental health? 1 in 4 people suffer from a mental illness or a neurological disorder at some point in their lives, which means that 450 million people currently suffer from one of these conditions. And that makes mental disorders the leading cause of disability worldwide. So, one of the objectives for my workshop is to break the stigma of mental health. So, there are treatments available, of course, but nearly 2/3 of people who have a known mental disorder never seek help from a health professional due to stigma, discrimination, and neglect prevent care and treatment from reaching people with mental disorders. So where there is neglect, there is little to no understanding. Um, so there are many people who go through life with some sort of mental disorder and never seek treatment of it, never seek treatment for it. So these people, they will either suffer, unfortunately, or a lot of people will self-medicate, whether it be with some sort of drug or alcohol, because they do not want to feel that the way that they are feeling, but they also are too afraid to speak up and reach out for help. So I'll get a little bit more into this further into my presentation. But the second objective I also wanted to kind of talk about was be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. It's very quick to it's very easy and very quick to judge somebody, especially like if you, let's say you are at the grocery store and the person in front of you is getting really angry or getting really upset, and it's just like, but you don't know what's going on in their life. Maybe they have a really sick kid and they just came from the hospital, or maybe they just found out that one of their loved ones um, is has cancer, or just anything like that. You don't know what's going on in someone else's life. And so we need to be kind to everybody, and we need to support each other and be there for each other, especially with mental illness. It's a very unfortunate thing, and there are many people who actually go go in and out of jail with mental illness. Over half of the inmates in jails have a mental disorder. And what happens is they get out, they are no longer receiving the medication that they were receiving in jail, and they end up committing another crime to go back to jail, because for them it's almost better to be able to get their medication, to get food, and to not be homeless for a lot of people. So the recidivism rate in jails is high because of mental disorders as well. Okay, so one thing I wanted to talk about was actually active duty military personnel and how they feel about the stigma of mental health. So, sorry, just one moment. Okay, so there was a study done with active duty soldiers. So 1,324 soldiers completed an assessment that included different stigma perceptions. So the different perceptions were indices of mental health symptoms, receipt of mental health treatment, and whether they had dropped out of treatment before it was completed. And it showed that, so they did this study with 6 different people, and 4 people, they all checked 50 or above for the PTSD checklist, and then 4 of those people also checked out for having other problems. Um, but once they had done the survey, it showed that the majority of these people um, do not seek the treatment that they need because of these stigmas, and they dropped out before their treatment was done. Um, so the practitioners need to be aware of how different stigma perceptions can influence treatment seeking and potentially target stigma perceptions during treatment to prevent dropout. It's something that the VA needs to definitely be aware of. And one reason I did want to talk about this in particular is because um, my husband was in the Army for 6 years, and he did serve in Afghanistan, and he's been back in the civilian world for about 3 years now. And being back in the civilian world has been very challenging for him. I think it's ended up being a lot more challenging than what he was anticipating. And so he has reached out for help. And whenever he's gone to somebody through the VA, they automatically put him in a what he refers to as a cookie cutter PTSD stigma. So he instead of listening to what my husband has to say and what is bothering him and what he needs to work through, he automatically will say, well, so I'm guessing the fireworks on the 4th of July bother you, or I'm guessing maybe when you're at a restaurant and you're feeling anxiety around all the people, maybe if you sit by the door, that would help. And it's just all of these things that don't affect him. He is affected in different ways than the primary cookie cutter ways of PTSD, the ways that people think about, or what movies or TV shows us. And so, unfortunately, because these these practitioners don't have that, they are unable to help, and they kind of just talk at you rather than listening to you and finding out what needs to be done. So there was actually another study done, and it was also with active duty Army personnel, and it showed that treatment facilitating interventions should reframe treatment inhibiting perceptions, and they should change leader behaviors. So they just were saying that there needs to be more positive leader behaviors, and witnessing treatment seekers within their experience. So it's kind of just like, well, someone in their unit also has looked out or has reached out for help and is trying their best to become the best version of themselves. And just to be able to see other people around them doing that, especially their higher ups, or for them to even be talking about it and letting them know, like, hey, this is okay. Like, you should do this. It would be good for you. I think that is extremely important because I think a lot of times, especially in the military, it's kind of looked down upon or seen as weak, and it is not. And I do believe that needs to change. So this is just a little picture I found, and it says, when we break a bone, sign my cast. When we get a bad cut, check it out, 12 stitches. When we get the flu, I just threw up all over everything I own. I need an old priest and a young priest. But then when we struggle with mental health issues, it shows someone saying, hey, and the other person just crossing their arms and not responding back. So I put a little quote on the side here that I've heard before, and it just says, going to a therapist when you are feeling down should be as normal as going to the doctor when you have a cold. And that's very true. I don't think that it should be seen as weak or that you are crazy or insane or have any of those. Like, you should be able to just go to the therapist when you're feeling down, and that should be supported and that should be okay. And it should be celebrated, honestly, because you are trying so hard to be the best version of you that you can be by doing that and by fighting whatever that you're fighting and knowing that you have that help and knowing that you have those resources rather than suffering from poor coping skills and trying to self medicate or even unfortunately um, take your own life. So, another thing that I wanted to talk about is that there are many warning signs of people with mental illness. Unfortunately for me, I have had a friend um, take his own life from suffering with depression, and it was something that I was unaware of. I did not realize that he was struggling that poorly. It was not something that he openly spoke about with me, and I really wish that I would have, that I would have seen it, and that I would have been able to just been there more for him or helped him look for those resources that he so desperately needed. So I just wanted to go over some things to look for. So, of course, if someone is feeling excessively sad or low, confused thinking or problems concentrating, extreme mood changes, so having uncontrollable highs and then uncontrollable lows, or the feeling of euphoria. Avoiding friends and social activities. So if someone that used to be outgoing and going out a lot all of a sudden wants to stay home all the time, check in on them. Difficulty understanding or relating to other people or changing in sleeping habits. So whether they want to sleep all the time or even if they can't sleep at all and they just have really bad insomnia, it's definitely something to look out for. So this is just a little quiz that I posted on here. If you guys wanted to take it, it is just it's free mental health quizzes and it has a bunch of different options for you, whether it be anxiety, social anxiety, depression, ADD, ADHD, just anything like that that you might think that you're suffering from and you want to learn more about. This is a great place to go. What did you learn? So I put on here to list 3 warning signs of what to look for those that are struggling with mental health issues that I just went over. And this is my references page. So thank you for listening. Just make sure that you do make yourself aware of those warning signs and help break the stigma that mental health is bad and that seeing a therapist is bad because it is not. It is a very great thing that, as I mentioned earlier, should be celebrated and supported by your family and your friends. Thank you.